saw you mention that your first record that you bought was Yogi Bear and Friends, I think it was, and then the second was
Yeah,
was Frank Zappa. Now, Frank Zappa is obviously a little bit more complex than Yogi Bear, and maybe a little
yeah.
bit more eclectic as well. So, what was it that drew you into Frank Zappa at such a young age?
The album cover.
Ah,
I was very young. I was obviously going from Yogi Bear to Zappa. There was a department store up the street from my house, and I remember I had to be a certain age before my parents would let me cross the main street by
of
myself.
course, yeah.
So the day that I was able to cross the main street, I went up and I loved music, obviously, and I saw the Zappa album cover for Freak Out. And I didn't really know Zappa. And I got the record and I listened to it, and I was stunned, it was just so different. It was just like a wall of odd, beautiful sound. But I was very young, so I didn't really connect the artist,
Mhm.
Frank Zappa, with the record. I didn't really. And it wasn't until some years later that my friend turned me on to a Zappa song that it was from Bongo Fury. No, it was I think it was Uncle Meat, and the song was Electric Aunt Jemima.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that started my real love affair with Frank's music.
That's where the connection came from. Excellent.
Yeah,
And then in terms of Frank, I mean, you actually got hold of his actual home phone number as well, didn't you, when you were a teenager? And you phoned it up expecting to speak to Frank. And I think it was his wife that you spoke to originally, but you kept
yeah,
calling and calling and things like that. And you eventually got to speak with Frank himself. He'd come back off the road or whatever. I mean, what do you
yeah.
remember about that conversation?
He was in a very good mood,
Ah,
and I was 18, and I was going to school at Berkeley, and I didn't even have a phone. I was using my friend's phone, and he was very nice. Oddly enough, when I think of what knowing Frank
hmm.
later, when I got to know him and work with him, I thought it was very odd that he took that phone call from me, because I was basically just like, yeah, I'm just a fan. But I knew that he was an Edgar Varese fan. Edgar Varese was a composer, and that he was looking for some scores. And it wasn't that easy to get scores back in those days, but the Boston Public Library had Edgar Varese scores. So I told him, hey, I've got some Edgar Varese scores I'd like to send to you, along with a transcription of some of your music, Frank's music, that I transcribed. And he gave me his home address,
Wow.
and I sent him that stuff. I did a transcription of the Black Page, and I sent him a tape of my band. I snuck that in there.
Of course.
And then I spoke to him again, and he was very, very positive about the tape and wanted to try me out for the band. But when I told him I was 18, he thought that was too young. But he was impressed enough with the transcription that I did that he hired me to be a transcriptionist. So I started to just, he started paying me, I think it was $5 a page, to listen to his music and write it down. And he
Phenomenal.
sent me, yeah, he sent me a big giant score called Mo and Herb's Vacation, and also the actual music for the Black Page, with a note that asked me to play it as fast as I can. So I made a tape of myself playing the Black Page, and I sent it to him. And the next thing I knew, the next time I had called him, I caught him in not such a good mood. And if Frank didn't want to talk, I mean, he was just like, there was just space, you know. So, uh, but then I saw this magazine interview he did in a San Francisco magazine, and he was talking about me and the tape that I had sent him. of the Black Page, and I couldn't believe it. I'd never really even seen my name in print, and there it was, Frank Zappa talking about me. It was really cool.
So how much later was the you actually joining the band? When did he decide that you're actually old enough to come and do this with us now?
Well, he didn't. What happened was the day after, a couple of days after my 20th birthday, I moved to California and I moved right down the street from him. And I
Not
just
stalking
started
him at all.
yeah, and I just started going up to the house, and once you start going up to the studio, you just Frank will just if you have something to offer, he'll just suck you in and you end up recording all this stuff, and that's what happened.